Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this could be my review for The Affair, Season 1, Episode 2, just called 2, so that's why I'm just saying Season 1, Episode 2. And, this episode, I was definitely really looking forward to. I loved last week's episode. I thought it was a great premiere. By far the best fall premiere of this year. You know, I loved it. I thought it was such a great show. I was really looking forward to the second episode. And how was second episode? The second episode was definitely a very good follow-up. I didn't think it was as good as the first episode, but I really love where the show is heading. I thought it was a perfect follow-up. I loved the episode, thought it was great, and, just loving the show. I think the show is definitely fantastic, and everything about it is really, really good. So, and there's a lot of interesting things going on, definitely, especially towards the end of this episode. There's this one theory I have, which might be a little bit out there, but if we think about it, it actually does make sense. Because the show, actually, this episode makes you think about it, change your opinion of a few things, which I think is definitely very interesting. But let's just get to it, because overall, I really love this episode. So first, of course, we see Noah's point of view. Noah's in the interrogation room with Jeffries, and he tells him he had no idea Allison was married before he met her, and that she never mentioned it to him, and she seemed like the loneliest girl in the world, which is kind of true if you think about it. She seemed like a very lonely girl, because she pretty much had no one on her, she had no one except for Cole, so it makes sense why he thinks that. So we cut to Noah the day he first met the day after he first met Allison. He's jogging. Basically, I was thinking he's doing this, basically trying to clear his head and forget her. And he goes outside and he tells Jeffries he just thought she was bad news. And so the next morning he did all he could to forget her. And with his second book in progress, he needed to clear his head. So Jeffries says he picked up a copy of his book and he's looking forward to reading it. So we find out right here that Noah has written his book, and I definitely think that's very interesting. Sorry, I'm getting a Skype message. But basically, we see that Noah has already written his book, which I think is definitely very interesting. And I wasn't thinking of that, but I thought that was definitely very interesting that that's happening. You know, small detail, but still very important. And he tells him the point was he wasn't thinking about her at all. However, we find out that Noah's actually lying to him because all we see, is Noah just trying to clear his head about all the events that happened the previous night, especially the shower and what he thought was her being raped by Cole, what he thought was rape. And, I thought that was definitely very interesting because we basically see that he's lying to Jeffries, which definitely makes my theory still think it's true. That I still think my theory is true, where of course, I think that Noah is trying to cover things up. I definitely feel like he's doing that. So Noah is then showering, and Helen comes in and asks if he wants a little company, and he says not really, and she says, gee, thanks, and she tells him he's not as fun as he used to be, and he tells her it's the opposite, he's more fun now, and she tells him she's gonna go find the pool boy that lets her shower with him, and he asks if they can have breakfast together. Before she does, which they do, he goes to the kitchen to look for Advil, but it's not there in the same place it was last summer, and Helen says that Margaret had an efficiency expert an efficiency expert redo the kitchen, and we then see this girl, Ruby, who is one of Whitney's friends, and you can really tell right away there's definitely something sketchy about her. I could tell right away, definitely. She's like a very rebellious girl, and Trevor is playing chess with Bruce, and he's beating him, but Noah and Helen says they should just let him win because he's 10, but Bruce says that he should learn the truth. So Margaret tells him to go get something for her headache, so they all head out, and Martin talks about, and they all head out, and I thought this was definitely very interesting. Martin talks about how he doesn't think Ruby being back is actually a good thing. And Helen says she has matured and is a good influence on Whitney now. And Martin says she got expelled, and Noah asks if that's true. Martin says no, but she did spend a lot of time in rehab. So that definitely is very interesting. And I'm wondering if we are going to find out more about Ruby's character, because she definitely is a very mysterious character that I want to definitely find out more about. So Stacy sees this ranch, says she wants to pet the horse, and Helen tells Noah that she used to be part of the ranch that Cole and Allison lived in. And there was a woman there who had 4 boys that they must be all grown up now. And Stacy and Noah are then playing I Spy. They're walking on the boardwalk, and Noah sees Allison there. And Stacy asks what he spots, and he says disaster. And Stacy's very happy to see Allison, but it's very awkward between her and Noah. Definitely a very awkward scene, but a very well done scene in my opinion. So Noah asks how she is, and she says she's fine. And he says he's been a bit worried about her. And Allison's friend, we don't exactly know who she is, but there's this girl, Mary Kate, who's with Allison. Basically, she asks if they know each other, and Allison says not really, but Noah buys Stacy an apple. He gives, and basically Allison's trying to basically ignore him, which I thought was definitely very interesting. That she's basically just trying to pretend like she's never met him before, and that he's just a stranger to her. I thought that was definitely very interesting when she was doing it. I wasn't expecting that, but I thought that was definitely really interesting. So they get back into the car, and Helen asks Noah if everything is okay, and he says yes, and Stacy sees the horse again. They go to the ranch, and Helen says she promised, and, they go to the ranch, and then we meet Cole's brother, Scotty. We meet a couple new characters in this episode. So Helen tells Scotty she remembers a long time ago, and, she remembers him from a long time ago, and he says he does too, and he asks if that's their daughter, and she says yes, and he introduces her to his brother, Hal, and he says to come with him. So Scotty, in the meantime, says he will give them a tour of the rest of his place, and Noah asks if he is Cole, and he says no, but he wants to meet Cole. Now, keep in mind, Noah has no idea that Cole is Allison's husband at this point. He has no idea that Allison's married. He has no idea at this point. So Cole's on a horse, and we can see that Cole's a lot more nice. Cole was kind of like dark in the first episode, and we were kind of like, why did Allison marry him? We find out why in Allison's point of view, but at this point, it's a lot like, why is, we see Cole being a lot more nicer and just a lot different than he was before. So Martin says he actually wants to help him and maybe want to take a job in, working on the ranch. But Cole says he's too young and inexperienced. And Noah introduced himself to Cole, and Cole tells Martin he's not qualified, but since he's here, he will teach him all the stuff that he needs to know to work on the ranch. And Helen says yes, and said it's a miracle this is happening to him because, he just had that suicide scare in the last episode, and she's definitely very concerned of him because of that, so that definitely was very good for Martin. Martin's barely in this episode, which I was fine with. I really like Martin's character, but, definitely, he wasn't in the episode a lot, so I thought that was interesting. So then Noah tells Jeffrey something that I thought was definitely very interesting. We kind of find out a little bit more about Noah, which I thought was very well done. He says, when you're young, people always ask you who you love. And Noah says love sent him into a panic, and his mother died, and his father drank himself to death. His sister took off, and this made him question, who does he love? He loves Helen, and after he met her, he felt like such a man, because, she was very rich, and he loved her, and he felt like a man, basically. And he laughs, and Jeffries asks why he's laughing, and Noah says he doesn't know. It just makes him laugh thinking about it right now. So that's definitely very interesting, and in my opinion, I think definitely at this point, him and Helen are divorced. Definitely in the future, where these flashbacks are in, because these are flashbacks, where we are in the present, with them talking to Jeffries, I definitely feel like him and Helen are divorced. I definitely feel like that's what's going on there. So Noah's then writing about Allison. He's pretending he's writing his book, but all he's writing is one word, Allison. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking his second novel is definitely based on Allison. You can tell that right away. His second novel is definitely going to be based on her, and Helen comes in, says she made him some lunch, and Noah says thanks and asks how the writing is going. He tells her not that good, and she asks him what's wrong. He tells her he's not inspired, he's bored, and he eats her sandwich and praises it. She asks him which dress, he picks, which dress he likes, and he picks one. And he picks one, but she picks the other one. So I thought that was definitely very interesting that she just picks the other one, and I wasn't expecting that, but I definitely thought that was a very interesting scene what happened there. So Whitney's then at the party with Ruby, and Noah asks her where the rest of her dress is. Literally, her dress is extremely short. Think of the size of this glass. Her dress is the size of this glass. That's how short her dress is. Seriously. Noah basically doesn't realize that his daughter is a slut. She is a complete slut. She is. And she says this is it, and he tells her go change, and she says no, and he says that she can stay in her home, so she goes there and, basically stay in her home because, he doesn't want her basically exposing herself to everyone. So Noah then catches Ruby drinking, and he tells her she can't drink, she's 16. And I thought this next scene was definitely very interesting when we find out. Because Helen then goes up to Noah and tells him something totally fucked up is going on, and he asks what's going on. She shows him, and I thought this was definitely really interesting, and a really interesting reveal, and kind of makes sense why this whole affair is going to happen. Because she shows him this girl, who is a piano teacher, and we find out that Bruce had an affair with this girl. And he asks what her name is, and Helen says she doesn't know what she's doing there, and she asks if he thinks he invited her, and Noah asks why he would do that, and Helen says because he's a dick, which he is. Bruce really is a dick. He's not a nice guy. And she's so upset she came Her mom works so hard for the party, and then her dad comes and shits on it, and he then sees that Allison is at the party bartending. So Bruce talks about Noah's life and introduces Noah to Harry, who is a guy who read his book, and Bruce says he actually thought he didn't like it, but that's part of his problem. He has no faith in people, which is interesting, because it kind of does make sense why he said that. So I thought that was definitely interesting what he said there. So Harry asks him about his next book and asks him what it's going to be about, and he says he hasn't actually started working on it yet. But he's planning on setting it on the island, and Helen comes up and is surprised they're already talking about his next book and says maybe his next book should be more commercial. You know, she doesn't really want her dad to be part of it, because as we know, she does not like her dad. She's not happy with her dad. She pretty much just wants her dad not to be a part of this book in any way, shape, or form. So Allison comes up and asks him if he orders whiskey here, and he says thank you, and Helen says she thinks that's the girl from the lobster roll, the waitress from the day Stacy choked, and he asked if she was flirting with him, and Bruce says yes, she was, and he says he would do the same thing to her, and, like, seriously, Bruce, like, I do not like Bruce's character. I like that really just Bruce is an asshole. I did like seeing that Margaret is actually not as bad as we think she is. She just resents Bruce so much. There's actually a very funny scene that I'll get to with her character, but Margaret, I definitely appreciate her character more in this episode. So, Noah asks if he can get anyone anything, and he said, and no one says anything, so he leaves, and he goes to the kitchen, and he asks, he sees Allison there. He goes to see Allison. He goes to see Allison, basically. And he asks her, how she is, and she says she's better now, and he tells her she shouldn't be smoking in there, and he takes her outside to his house, or basically, where he's staying, because, there's, like, a beach there and things like that, and they unlock the door, and she asks him if he has the coat, and he says it's always been his coat is his wife's birthday, and they go on to the beach, and she goes into the water and tells him to join her. And she asks if he's having trouble with his new book, and he says he is having trouble, and she tells him that he should try to forget about the book for a while, and asks if he came here to be on vacation, and he tells her no one came here to finish his book, and he says when he saw this morning, she acted like she wanted nothing to do with him. And she says that's because he has a daughter, and he tells her he's married, and she says she knows, and he says to him, basically he says to him that means nothing can happen between them, basically he says that to her, and she asks if he's serious, and he says he's very serious, and, we know that's not gonna last. We know that for a fact, and she says okay, and tells him it was nice meeting him, and he finds out that the ranch is actually hers, and this is also when he found out she was married. So she pecks him on the cheek and leaves. He sits on the beach, and literally she just left, so he's literally just thinking to himself, what the fuck was that? And I would probably have the same reaction. I mean, if a girl would just, like, completely just kiss me on the cheek, I'd be like, what? I just told you I want nothing to do with you, and you did that? Like, what the hell just happened? Like, I would probably definitely do the same thing that Noah did. I mean, that definitely makes sense why he said that. So, Jeffries then asks him what happened last night, and he says nothing that bad. He apologizes to Bruce, and then went to sleep with his wife, and he then asks him how any of this is relevant to what happened. And Jeffrey says it may not be. He's just trying to figure out what happened and what could have caused. And we find out what could have caused someone to kill this man. Now, we now know that it is a man that was murdered. We officially know that. We know that it was a he, and I thought that was definitely very interesting, that they finally confirmed that it was a man. I mean, it's only been 2 episodes, but I like that they're doing the best they can to be so subtle about it, where it's not like every 5 seconds, oh, a man was killed, a man was killed. No. We just need to have those context clues that shows us, hey, a man was killed. So, Noah says he thought it was an accident because he tells him it was an accident, but apparently it wasn't. So, then we find out that once again, Noah is lying to Jeffries because he didn't go to apologize to Bruce. He went back on the beach. He sees Allison again. She tells him she's sorry. She knows his wife's birthday, and he kisses her, and he lied. So that's the end of Noah's point of view. So I thought that was definitely the perfect way to close out his point of view, and I was very surprised that he just basically lied to him. I thought that was definitely very interesting. So now let's go to Allison's point of view, which was definitely very interesting. What happened with Allison's point of view in this episode. We found out a couple more things about Allison, which I thought was definitely very interesting. And one of the things I liked with Allison's point of view, I gotta say, we actually saw scenes from the first part of the episode with Noah's point of view continue in Allison's point of view, which I thought was definitely really cool, and I'll get to that. So Allison's on her bike and she stops at this boardwalk and she asks this fisherman, Will, how the night was, and he said it was fucking deep, and he hands her fish and she tells him they are beautiful, and he says thanks, and he asks how she's been doing these days. And she says she looks better now than she did before, and she tells him to take care of himself and get some sleep. And she goes into the ranch and gives a fish to Caleb, who is reading a book by Bruce Butler, aka Helen's father. Now, I really love the way they connected this, because basically what we find out is that Allison pretty much just hates Bruce, thinks he's a terrible human being, she wants nothing to do with him. And, Cole basically just, basically, Caleb does whatever he can to change the subject, and she says Cole asks him to keep the door locked, and he tells her it's early, and no one is going to stop by, there's nothing to worry about there. So, then we see in a monologue, Allison's telling Jeffries that she was sure she'd never see Noah again. She thought he was just a stop sign, and I thought this was definitely very interesting what she said. She's comparing, Noah basically to like a stop sign you'd see on a street corner, how she never thought she'd see it again. It's just like a little stop sign you'd see. She never thought she'd really see him again. She didn't think he mattered that much to her, and she never really thought that she'd have to see him again. So, that was definitely very interesting to see her, her kind of compare that to a stop sign. I thought that was interesting. So, basically, she goes to her job and looks for Oscar, and, because she doesn't know where Oscar is, and she knocks on the door, and he asks her why she's there, and she says she wants her check, but he doesn't give it to her. So Jill comes in and asks what she wants, and he asks what she wants, and he's like, why are you multiplying? I mean, Oscar is definitely a douchebag of a character. He's a really messed up character, but he's hilarious at the same time. He's just like, what are you two doing here? Oh no, you're multiplying. Like, that was definitely a very funny line. And I do like that the show definitely has a lot of humor. It keeps the show going, definitely. So, Oscar says and basically, she comes in, she says she wants nothing just to blow him, and that gives Allison the check. So I thought that was really funny. So Oscar says he has a catering job if they want it, and she asks where it is, and he says it's at Bruce Butler's. And she at first says no, she wants nothing to do with this. She pretty much doesn't want to do this at this point. She says, nope, I'm not doing this, and, Jill says she is all for it, though, and wants to basically do it. She is all in and wants to cater, basically. So I thought that was definitely interesting, but it made sense because Allison wanted nothing to do with Bruce. But we knew that eventually she was going to say yes. So then we see Allison go to meet that girl, Mary Kate, who we find out is actually her sister-in-law, which I thought was definitely a very interesting twist, and the thing I like is, again, they're connecting what we saw in the first part to the second part, and I love the way they're doing that. So, Mary Kate kind of has this really weird discussion about how Hal wanted to have a threesome with her, and she asks Allison if she has before, and Allison says no. Not much to say there. I don't want to talk about that for that long. It was just really out there and just like, what the fuck are you talking about? So Allison tells Jeffries that the way people were far away from her made her feel better. She was alone and safe, and then we start to see and here we're starting to see differences between Noah's story. And once again, she's not wearing revealing clothes at all. And again, that is pretty much because Noah has a crush on her and he's picturing her this way. So Stacy sees her first and tells Allison he couldn't wait to see her again. And Noah says that, and Mary Kate introduced herself to Noah and asks if they're sisters, and she says they are sister-in-laws, and he leaves, but Mary Kate says he wants to have sex with one of them, but Noah says he's married, and Mary Kate says that never stopped anyone. So that's a very interesting line, because we know eventually that they are going to have this affair, and definitely that is going to happen. So I thought that was definitely a very interesting line, and definitely sets things up perfectly. So they go over to the ranch, and Cole asks how they made out, and Mary Kate says pretty well, and Allison says they are charging $8 a jar, and he's happy to see Allison happy. And then Whitney then comes to pick up Martin, and I love the way they did this, because of course we know that Martin worked on that job with Cole, and now we're seeing Whitney picking him up. So basically, Whitney is very, very seductive towards pretty much everyone. We pretty much see that Whitney is just this slutty teenager that pretty much is I hate to call her this, but a prostitute. Like, she would have sex with anyone. You name it, she would have sex with anyone. She would sexually talk to anyone. That's just how she is. So she tells him he has to go and clean up she tells Martin he has to go and clean up for the party, and she asks what they do here, and they tell her, and the horses and the train ride, and she says she's never been on a horse, but something tells her she'd love it, and she says she's a dancer, so she has really loose hips, and I was just like, okay, you're going too far. And Scotty says he would love to teach her how to ride, but Cole asks him what he's doing, and I agree with Cole, and he says he's just trying to expand their business. But the thing is, Scotty could definitely end up getting charges for this. I definitely feel that, this is not going to end well for him. And he doesn't realize that he's sort of getting himself into a very bad relationship. I don't know if it's going to be a relationship. I don't know what Whitney's going to do, but I thought that was definitely very interesting. So, basically, Allison's mother-in-law then comes to talk to her and asks her how she is and if Cole has been good to her. And she says she's so proud of how they've gotten through this together, and she always knew they were right for each other. And we find out that basically the two of them have known each other since they were little. They hate each other, and she tells her every night, she says to herself how grateful she is to be blessed with Cole and all for other children. And she says she will be there for her if her and Cole decide to have another baby. And she tells and I thought that was definitely very interesting because of course we know that Allison has another child. So could that child be her and Cole's, or could that child be her and Noah's? That definitely sets things up perfectly. They don't really talk about that in this episode, which I actually liked because it makes us very suspicious of things, and I like the way they're subtly doing things, definitely. So she then tells Jeffries that she didn't have many friends that summer. She only had Cole and his family. She then calls a dress shop to give her a dress, and she has decided to cater for Bruce. She sees Helen and Noah arguing. That was very different. Before it was just like a playful conversation, but they're actually arguing here. They're full on arguing, but we don't know what they're actually saying. So it's very different than Noah's version, though. We know that. So Margaret talks to Allison, recognizes her as the poor woman who lost her baby, and she says she promised her $1,000 will she spill a drink on her husband. And I thought that was hilarious. I actually really like Margaret's character, and even though she is very snobbish and very, stuck up and just a rich person, she's very funny, and you can definitely sympathize with her. So she then sees Scotty going upstairs with Whitney, and I was like, what's gonna happen here? So Noah catches them and asks what's going on. Scotty says he was just looking for the bathroom and tells him thank you. And then he asks Allison if she wants to get out of here, and it's a very, very different scene than what we got, definitely very different. And he asks her if she wants to go into the water, and she says no, she can't swim. And he tells her that's a travesty, and he then realizes that she's married, but she doesn't wear her ring when she works. And he says he doesn't believe Cole's her husband because married people don't have sex like they did. They don't really have anal sex or anything. And he asks what marriage means to her, and she says she used to think it means putting him before everyone else, but now she just hopes she doesn't kill him. And we find out that Noah got married straight out of college, and he wanted to be rich like Helen, and he loved her, and he still does, but if he had to do it again, he would have waited a little bit longer, give himself the time to see who he would become. And I thought this next scene was definitely very interesting, because he talks to her about what would happen if they could travel back in time. Which, of course, is a theory that it splits into a tangent, which is a parallel universe. So, in a way, they could live both lives. Now, that is very interesting because, of course, this show is split into two different parts. So, my question is, do you think that possibly this show is taking place in an alternate universe? I feel like Noah's point of view is an alternate universe. It's glamorous. It's perfect. It's just perfect. His life is perfect. He has a great family. But in Allison's point of view, he seems to not have as good as a family life as we think he does. He has a lot of problems with his wife. It seems him and his wife are arguing more. His daughter's a slut. Like, he has a lot of problems in Allison's point of view. So definitely, I am wondering what's going to happen there. I'm definitely interested in seeing what's going to happen. And I definitely feel that maybe Noah's point of view is not the actual point of view. So I think that definitely is very interesting. And he asks what she wants to do now. She says she wants him to kiss her and they make out. And then we go back to the president. Allison tells Jeffries she really doubts it was anyone at the party who killed this guy because everyone at the party was a local, but the road where he died, where the guy died, leads to a fancy club that tourists like to go to. So she doesn't know why anyone would be heading that way, which makes sense. I understand her logic there. So Jeffrey says he was going that way, and she says she drove back to the city that night, and she will do anything to find out what happened to this guy and can't believe he's gone. So we see Allison walk home after her and Noah have made out, and we see a guy in a car shout, and she walks home. Very, very different from what happened, and that really makes me think that maybe Noah's theory is true. It definitely is out there. It really is out there, but in my opinion, it definitely makes sense. This could be a different night, a different party, because, the entire last scene was very different than what ended up happening in Noah's point of view. So my question is, do you think that possibly these two universes, one of them is a parallel universe? Definitely the murder is a real universe, but Noah and Allison's point of view is definitely one of them is a tangent, is a parallel universe. Maybe one that Noah has in his head and maybe wants to make his life more glamorous, so he doesn't, he avoids all the problems he has, because he seems to, like, not have as many problems in his point of view. He has problems, like, with, Martin and Whitney, but not as many problems with Helen, who he seems to have problems with in Allison's point of view. So I'm wondering what's going to happen there, definitely. Scotty and Whitney, I have no idea what's going on there. Like, Whitney seriously needs to get herself under control. She needs to stop being such a slut, because she totally is a slut, and she needs to stop basically being a prostitute, because she pretty much is just a prostitute, and she needs to stop doing this, because it's really just, she needs to stop. As far as Allison and Noah goes, I definitely feel they're going to get a lot closer. We can see in the next episode they're going to start to become very deep with each other. It's something going to be very interesting to see what happens there. As we know now, Allison doesn't really want much to do with Cole, so I'm wondering what's going to happen there, definitely, and I think that definitely is very interesting. As far as Noah's second book goes, do you think he's going to write about Allison? I think he did write about Allison. I think that's what his second book's all about. We know that he didn't finish his second book till the present, so my question is, what took him so long to finish this book? Because we know that he's on that vacation to finish that book. That's why he's on that vacation, to get some inspiration, and we know that now. My other question is, what is going to happen with, sorry, what is going to happen? I'm trying to think of what I want to say here. What exactly is going to happen with, this point of view with the parallel universe? Do you guys think that could be true? I definitely think that is a possibility, that definitely could be true. And, that's basically for my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. I'm loving this show. I think this show is amazing. And also, that affair that's going on with, Bruce and, Bruce and that piano teacher, do you think that maybe, Noah kind of understands why he's doing, because Noah is no better than Bruce, so my question is, do you think Noah's gonna become Bruce? I don't know, but I guess we'll just have to see, because again, in my opinion, this is really a story of the rich and the poor. Allison's not in any way poor, but she's not as fortunate as, Noah is, so I definitely think it's very interesting, the way they kind of contrast over things, so I think that definitely is very interesting. I'm looking forward to the next episode. So I will see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for tonight's episode of the original. So I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.